بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وعلى آله الطاهرين وصحبه المنتجبين اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد وعجل فرجهم. Sisters and brothers, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. The second session of spiritual wayfaring, I think it's necessary to start with a recap of the major points that we discussed in the first session. We started at that time by stating that Urafa, or the mystical specialist, claim or assert that humans that have been created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala need to go through spiritual cleansing. And this process of spiritual cleansing gets the far advanced that we become in the process, then gets us closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And they rely on a number of verses in the Holy Quran or passages in Surah Shams, قَدْ أَفْلَحَ مَنْ زَكَّاهَا وَقَدْ خَابَ مَنْ دَسَّاهَا, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that Allah has created humans, and the soul that Allah gives to human needs purification, because we all are created, or we are born with huge number of potentialities, and these potentialities are needed to be actualized. And this is why tazkiyah and purification is necessary. قَدْ خَابَ مَنْ دَسَّاهَا, and ultimately the person who fails to purify the soul will lose out on the day of judgment. Because at the end of the day, our goal is not, we are not going to live on this earth permanently. The place of abode is somewhere else, and we have to prepare ourselves for that place. Again, another verse that says about Tazkiyah, Surah Al-A'la, verse number 14, قَدْ أَفْلَحَ مَنْ تَزَكَّى. The one that purified the soul is the one that is successful. They say, they use this metaphorical language. They say this journey from attachment to the material to ultimately, when we reach the highest level of nafs al-mutma'inna that Quran talks about, is an actual spiritual journey that we need to go through step by step to get ultimately to that stage, that the time of liqa, or seeing, but spiritually, not with the eyes, seeing of being in the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This concept is Surah Inshiqaq, يا أيها الإنسان إنك كادح إلى ربك كدحا فملاقيه. For liqa and the spiritual annihilation and observance to take place, it's a huge struggle. Where do we start? Last time when we talked about this, I said that all mystical figures and scholars agree that the concept of Sharia and attachment, or at least adherence to the principle of the law of Sharia, is critical. You cannot start this spiritual journey and wayfaring without focusing on what we call the basic requirement of haram and halal, to stay away from haram and to focus on halal. This is the most basic things that all scholars all scholars of Irfan, they have agreed upon. And Tawbah was number one on the list. Without repentance, proper repentance, as Quran says, Tawbat Nasuh, which means a clear determination that we are not going to, with a reflection. We first reflect on the past and we realize that the past has been wasted. Now we make a clear determination and azm that we are going to go back to the right path, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for forgiveness and we move forward. That tawbah is the first step. Without it, it's not going to happen. The concept of yo-yoing between forgetfulness and remembrance, sinfulness and obedience is not going to be helpful in the context of what we call spiritual wayfaring and this long journey ahead. So the foundation that we need to establish is that tawbah. Without that tawbah, nothing is going to happen. After tawbah, we have various suggestions by these scholars that briefly we talked about last time. That was first takhliya, which means emptying ourselves or of the effect or the consequence of a long period of sinfulness and forgetfulness of Allah. According to ahadith, every sin that we commit, the heart of a human being, which has Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created to be the seat of God's or divine majesty, by each scratch, by each sin or disobedience, there is a scratch on that polished heart. Ultimately, we reach a point where we have created so much scratch on this polished surface that it becomes opaque. It doesn't reflect the light of reality that it should supposed to be. So we need to gradually empty. Takhliya in Arabic language means to empty ourselves of our shortcomings and the consequence of sinfulness. Once we have removed all the negative traits one by one, then we start with tahliya, as the scholars say, which we begin acquiring positive traits and attributes. Then tajliya, which is the polishing of the soul gradually. And all of this requires certain step to be taken as prerequisite in the process that we are going to go through. The book that I recommended, the Al-Lubab, which was translated the kernel of the kernels, and it is a good translation. I sister put it on the website for you to read. Chapter 5 of that book I strongly recommend for you to read it. That talks about the conditions that we really need to go through one by one. Today I'm going to slightly digress and present few concepts within Irfan that are related to our discussion, and then move into the Sayr and Suluk again. Irfan, similar to philosophy, has its own unique worldview, has its own narrative, its own language, its own terms that uses, and its own worldview of what is happening around. In the same thing that we have akhlaq, ethics, divided in Islamic context into practical ethics and theoretical ethics, and philosophy divided into theoretical philosophy and practical philosophy, Irfan or mysticism is divided into these two categories of theoretical as well as practical. In the theoretical Irfan, major concepts are presented that are fundamental and pivotal in understanding of Irfan. Few of them I'm going to mention. I don't intend to focus on them because you really need each one of them to spend huge amount of time to understand exactly what they mean. Number one on the list is Wahdatul Wujud. Wahdatul Wujud, or the unity of the being. Technically, it says that in reality there is only one real thing, and that is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Nothing else is real. I just leave it here because I don't want to get into the debate, because there are various interpretations have been given for this by different scholars, some of them off mark, some of them not, but we just as a concept or the theme being presented within Irfan. There is also something similar to it, which some Urafa they talk about, Wahdat al-Shuhud, which when humans reach to the highest level, there is only one thing that they see, nothing else. These are very kind of synonymous with each other. With regard to creation, they differ with philosophers and others. Urafa, they don't believe in creation. Where philosophy talks about creation, in our language, Quran talks about creation. In Irfan, they talk about tajalli, self-disclosure. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, based on a famous hadith that كنت كنزا مخفيا فأردت أن أعرف فخلقت الناس لكي أعرف أو فخلقت العالم لكي أعرف. I was a hidden treasure. I wanted to be known. Love, this is the concept of love. فأحببت أن أعرف. So I began creation. They say creation in the first instance is a self-disclosure and unveiling of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is tajalli. It's not creation in a sense that we know it. So there is a difference between this concept of khalq or tajalli between Urafa and others. There's also the theme of hubb and the love that we just talked about, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala كنت كنزا مخفيا فأحببت أن أعرف. The concept of hubb as the essence and the central theme for creation. How it unpacks itself in the world around us, in the cosmology of Islam, how it becomes graded, that from the divine love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala into the human love, these gradation takes place. The Urafa have taken this concept of hubb to a higher level and discussion. They say in the ultimate sense of self-annihilation, at the time where the Al-Insan al-Kamil reaches the highest level, God becomes the lover and the beloved. Because now the essence or the existence of the human Insan al-Kamil is no longer of value. The heart becomes a mirror where Allah self-disclose in it, and then Allah as the lover, and the reflection from the heart becomes what Allah loves, which is the image of the divine. These are something that we can discuss on another time. And also they say jala and istijla. I mean, these are words, phrases, if you were to spend some time reading about books of Irfan. One thing which is of critical importance for us to understand when we talk about sayr and suluk is the concept of human being within Irfan. Urafa pay huge amount of attention to human being. They say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, humans are thought to be the most complex and the most important piece of this self-disclosure. Because there is a hadith, nothing else contains me but the heart of a true believer. So if the heart of a true believer to reach that level of projecting God's or divine's image, it has to be such unique individuals. So, and sometimes some Urafa refer to humans to be Al-Alam Al-Akbar, the grand world, and everything within our cosmology to be the Alam Al-Asghar, the smaller world. There is a quartet poem from Amir al-Mu'mineen. It says, دَوَاؤُكَ فِيكَ وَمَا تَبْصُرُ. Your cure for your disease are within yourself, and you don't see it. وَدَاؤُكَ مِنْكُ وَمَا تَشْعُرُ. And your disease, again, emanates from yourself, and you are not paying attention. وَتَحْسَبُ أَنَّكَ جَرْمٌ صَغِيرٌ. Do you consider yourself something useless, small entity? وَفِي كَنْطَ وَالْعَالَمُ الْأَكْبَرُ. The entire complexity of the creation is presented in you. And now when we go back to the story of Genesis, when Malaika say, why do you want to create something that is going to create havoc on earth? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, I know something that you don't. إِنِّي أَعْلَمُ مَا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. أَعْلَمُ مَا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ is the potential of humans that far exceeds anything else that we can imagine. So, and they also differ with regard to how humans develop, with accepting that this unique character has to evolve and tazkiyah and elevate itself, how it should do that. Philosophers, they say through knowledge, ilm, and aql. These are the two that they have to work together and purified or polished. Urafa say it's through the heart and through the soul. Ilm and knowledge, it's not going to produce the result that we want in elevating humans to the point where the heart becomes the center of the disclosure of divine. One thing else again here that brings back this kind of we return to the concept of to the discussion on the journey wayfaring is the fact that insan is gharib in this world, stranger here. Because the essence of Allah, insan, is the soul that Allah blew in the material creation. That soul, it belongs to Allah, and ultimately humans become ala bidhikrillah tatma'innul qulub. You become stabilized, the heart becomes stabilized, the soul becomes stabilized in only going back to the source. And that is to meet, to reach the highest level of Allah and meeting with Allah and self-annihilation. So these concepts are all, I just mentioned them very briefly to understand that it's a complex concept when we talk about journeying and wayfaring, but it requires the polishment of the soul. One of the debate, if you go to chapter 5 in this book, the beginning of chapter 5, Marhum Tahrani talks about an old debate within the mystics, right from the early beginning. We go back to the end of 1st century and possibly the beginning of the 2nd century. And by the way, this debate exists in the Western terminology, both Christian and Jewish. Can spiritual enlightenment and spiritual purification be attained without masters, without professors, without guides? This is one of the debates that they say, technically no, but yet possible. Technically you need somebody who has gone through this path of the journey of the soul to grab your hand, one's hand, and navigate through the minefield that we have to deal with. But it is possible on occasion that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala discloses or somehow grants a group of people certain privileges that they are able to go through this path and navigate the path for themselves. So the first part of it is it's necessary for you to have a look, because that's standard discussion in Irfanic literature. The most critical part is the one that comes next. When, let us assume we decide, and I believe this kind of discussion in the Western terminology has or does exist as well, but in a different concept. If we have a bad habit, let's say nastajiru billah, drug user, alcoholic, or anything else, if we want to kick the habit, what's the first thing that we need to do? That is a critical thing, a changing lifestyle. If I am by alcoholic, I worked with Alcoholics Anonymous during the period where I was at the center, and we worked on a number of patients and so on. One of the disclosed fact that they focus upon is that somebody who has been addicted to alcohol must change lifestyle and the environment that they have been used to, or opiate or drug or anything else. I have worked as a chaplain in prisons both in Colorado and other places, and we recommended that prisoners that they finish their life in prison and they come out, for them to be given a different opportunity for a lifestyle, so that they are not sucked back into the same old lifestyle, because otherwise within 6 months they are as crooked as the moment that they have come out. They are not moving at all. So this is critical issue, that if you really want to change your and you have a clear determination to change, lifestyle change is necessary. And lifestyle change begins by identifying places or individuals and conditions that led you to sinfulness or any other shortcoming in the first place. There is an expression in English, American English, they say that if you want to fly like an eagle, don't associate yourself with turkeys. So find somebody that lifts you up. Give me your friends and I tell you who you are. Environmental and lifestyle says quite a lot about this, whether one is determined to change one's life or not. And abandoning, if you go to that chapter, immediately after the discussion regarding the need for masters and so on, comes to the abandoning conventional or habitual practices and customs, which is the lifestyle. The first step for the spiritual traveler to take is to abandon the contingent affair, umur i'tibariya, those illusionary and fictitious values and conventional habits and practices that prevent him from traveling on the path. If one is planning to go through this spiritual journey, if your friends and others are holding you back, your lifestyle are shackled that holds you back, then you are not going to succeed in this. If I'm trying to get rid of this negative habit of, say, backbiting or slander or habitual lying or etc., or many other shortcomings that I have, if I go back into the same area or environment and circumstance and encircle myself by friends or individuals that immediately, they were the cause of me falling into that trap, I have zero chance of being able to go through this spiritual journey. This is why it is so critical for those who start after Tawbah in the process of takhliyah, when they want to empty themselves of the negative traits, to start by creating a new atmosphere, a new environment around oneself that would help those of you who are familiar with children's development, the nurture nature. The environment has a consequence. You put a child into an environment which is corruptive, the child naturally grows to be corruptive. You put the child in an environment that it is helping to induce spirituality and consciousness, comes out. Because the environment that we create, the friends that we have around ourselves, are critical in the understanding, or in this, whether we are serious enough to go forward or not. So after making the decision, whether we agree that the masters are necessary in this field or not, but without a concrete change, the possibility of success is very minimum, because we are constantly struggling with the environment that our shaitan is pulling us back into the old lifestyle, when we are trying to remove the shackle from our ankles. The nafs al-ammara, which is the lowest level of soul, that commands us to do bad things and follow ego and all other negative traits, has to be broken somewhere. Once I make the clear determination that I want to free myself from that lifestyle, I cannot, it's a contradiction by term, to go back again into the same old lifestyle. We really need, if we are serious, azm that comes after is detected. That for me to be conscious that there is only one thing that I have to submit to, and that is the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as the verse in the Holy Quran says, وَلَا يَخَافُونَ فِي اللَّهِ لَوْمَةُ لَائِمٍ. The only thing that determines their lifestyle and how they behave is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if I intend to move into that field, people who are around me must be very close and very supportive. As I said earlier, with regard to even worldly habit, they say, even with regard to diets, if one is planning to change diet, they say start with the environment around you. If everybody else is trying to entice you to break the diet and your determination, you will not succeed. So we really need to change people's lifestyle and people and the environment around us for us to be able to succeed. So tahliya as well as tajliya, which comes through submission to the command of Allah, tariqah, is not going to happen if we are going back to the same lifestyle that we started. It's a critical, pivotal issue that we need to pay attention to. Otherwise, the tawbah will be broken. We keep yo-yoing, breaking the tawbah, oh Lord, forgive, and then 2 days later we are back into the same kind of habit, making sins or disobeying Allah, and we have to start again, this going back and forth. I'm going to stop here and answer questions, but then inshallah we move next week few other steps within this process that would help us ease the manner. Couple of things for your attention. Fasting is extremely critical for the wayfarer. Not just relying on fasting during the month of Ramadan. Fasting on a regular basis. You start with 1 day a week, 2 days a week, 3 days a week. There are a hadith from the Holy Prophet ﷺ that says, I fast 1 day and I break 1 day. Outside the month of Muharram, month of Rajab and Sha'ban, if one can fast full month in advance, because it helps our mind and spirit to get into the true meaning of fasting, spiritually rather than just physically abstention from drink and food. No, it has to be concrete change through month of Rajab and Sha'ban as well. But fasting is critical. Salat al-Layl becomes another critical issue, that we just don't wake up for Salat al-Subh and that's it. We wake up earlier, an hour before Salat al-Subh. I know this is very difficult for people, but one has to accustom oneself gradually. And recitation of Quran, recitation of dhikr and everything else. But these two, fasting and Salat al-Layl, have been recommended by scholars to be of utmost importance for those who intend to step into this path of spiritual wayfaring. Thank you very much. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.